She came to teach literature. They tried to humiliate her, but what they didn't expect was how she'd answer. Watch until the end to see how one silent woman shook an entire elite school. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Imani Rodess stepped off the city bus 2 blocks from Calder Preparatory Academy, her grip tightening around the worn leather strap of her father's old briefcase. Her breath rose in short, visible puffs despite the warm California morning. She took a deep breath and glanced up at the towering wrought iron gates of the most prestigious private school in the state. The stone plaque near the entrance read, "Founded 1893. Excellence through Legacy." Imani adjusted her gray cardigan, smoothed her navy skirt, and walked forward. The security guard barely glanced at her as she passed. That alone told her everything she needed to know. She wasn't expected. She wasn't one of them. Inside, the parking lot gleamed with black SUVs and Teslas, students in designer clothes laughing too loud, tapping on their iPhones, sipping expensive smoothies. Their eyes didn't rest on her for more than a flicker of curiosity before moving on, like she was a distant speck in their day, irrelevant. Room 203. Her new battlefield. 9th grade literature. Her first full-time position since leaving a crumbling public school on the east side, where she taught students who had more heart than opportunity. She had come here because it paid better, because she needed stability, and, naively, because she thought maybe, just maybe, she could make a difference. When she opened the door, the noise didn't stop. The classroom was loud, alive with movement. No one stood. No one acknowledged her. A tall boy with blonde hair leaned back in his chair near the window, lazily flipping a pen between his fingers. His sneakers were propped on the desk in front of him, next to a girl with a high ponytail and manicured nails typing with one hand and sipping a pink drink with the other. "Yo," the boy said, not looking up. "Who are you?" "I'm Miss Rodess," she said, her voice calm but carrying. "Your new literature teacher." The ponytail girl snorted. "Where's Mr. Brown?" "He retired," Imani replied. "I'll be with you for the rest of the year." Blonde boy chuckled, finally looking at her. "Wow, and here I thought Calder had standards." A ripple of laughter moved through the room. She walked to the board and wrote in firm strokes, "Literature as a mirror of society." "You writin' your manifesto, or what?" someone mumbled from the back. "I suggest you open your notebooks," she said, placing the chalk down and turning around. "Do you have a degree?" Ponytail girl asked, squinting as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "Yes, I have 2. "In what? Community rage and urban studies?" the blonde boy asked. The room erupted. She stood tall. "Let's begin." But no one listened. Throughout the period, the students scrolled their phones, whispered, laughed when she turned her back. One boy took a selfie with her in the background and added a Snapchat caption, "Miss Harlem in the house." By the time the bell rang, her palms were damp and her voice was raw. Not from yelling, she hadn't, but from trying to reach across a chasm that none of them seemed interested in crossing. She walked to the staff room slowly. Inside, a few teachers sat with their coffee. No one looked up when she entered. "Rough first hour?" one of them finally said without turning from his laptop. They weren't receptive. "They never are," the man said. "It's Calder. You're not the first to think you can fix them." After lunch, she returned for round 2. The same class, now louder. She began a discussion on To Kill a Mockingbird. A hand shot up. "Why are we reading this?" the blonde boy asked. "Like, are we supposed to feel bad or something? I want us to examine how the book critiques systems of—" He cut her off. You know, this book is banned in like 5 districts. Maybe we should ban it too. It's not banned here, she replied, and it's relevant. Let's focus. He leaned back again, smirking. You seem tense. You okay? The girl next to him mimicked her voice in a high-pitched tone. Let's focus, ma'am. This isn't after-school tutoring. Another burst of laughter. The day dragged on. By her 6th period, she was exhausted. She sipped from the tea she'd left in the staff room earlier, only to choke. It was salty. Laughter drifted from the hallway. Someone had tampered with it. She dumped the cup in the sink and wiped her eyes. The next morning, she arrived early again. She wrote a quote from Maya Angelou on the board. Still, I rise. Then she stood and waited. When the students entered, someone read the quote aloud and scoffed. Is this a poetry class or a therapy session? Blond boy, Logan Wells, she learned, entered last. He sauntered in with a phone in hand, filming as he walked. Say hi to TikTok, Miss Rodess. She held his gaze. Put the phone away. He lowered it slowly, but grinned. At lunch, she tried to sit alone in the staff room again, but even that was taken from her when she heard 2 teachers whispering behind her. I give her 2 weeks, one said. She's too principled. She's not Calder material. Later that day, the tension boiled over. In the hallway between classes, she was walking toward the copier when she felt a tug on her skirt. Hard, sudden. It lifted briefly, exposing the back of her thigh. She spun around. Laughter. Phones. Logan stood behind her, his hand still half extended. Just checking the fabric quality, he said, deadpan. She yanked the skirt down and backed away, heart racing, cheeks burning. No one stepped in. No adult said a word. She walked straight to the principal's office, but he wasn't in. She walked to the staff room, empty. She stood in the restroom for 5 full minutes, staring at the stall door, breathing deeply, hands clenched. That night, at home, she sat in silence. On her laptop, she opened a document and began to write. Not a complaint, not a resignation, but the truth, a declaration. And when she clicked post, she didn't look back. The next morning, Imani walked into Calder Prep with her head held high, though her body still carried the tension of the day before. Whispers floated through the corridors like steam in a locked bathroom, thick and inescapable. Phones buzzed in palms, faces turned toward her, then quickly away. She didn't need to guess. She knew. The video of Logan lifting her skirt had circulated overnight. Someone had caught it, either partially or fully, and shared it through the school's anonymous Instagram account, followed by nearly every student on campus. It was captioned, Miss R gets her first Calder welcome #classy. Her hand tightened on her bag strap. The principal's office had called her in before the first bell. She stepped inside, her face calm, shoulders back. Principal Morgan sat behind a glass-topped desk. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s with silver-streaked hair and a tie that always seemed too tight. Across from him sat Vice Principal Heller, arms crossed, eyes tired. Miss Rodess, Morgan began, not quite meeting her eyes. Thank you for coming. We wanted to discuss what happened yesterday. You mean the assault? Imani asked, sitting down without being invited. There's no need to escalate the language, Heller chimed in quickly. A student lifted my skirt in a public hallway and laughed while others recorded it. What word would you prefer I use? Morgan leaned back, folding his hands. We've spoken with Logan and his parents. They say it was a misunderstanding, a poor attempt at humor. A misunderstanding? Imani repeated. There's video. There were witnesses. Yes, and we're reviewing all materials, he replied. Logan's father, is the school's top donor," she said, cutting him off. The silence that followed confirmed it. "I want to file a formal complaint," she said, placing a printed document on his desk. "With the school board." "That's your right, of course," Morgan said slowly. "But please understand, such actions bring attention. To the school, to the students, to you." Amani stood. "Good. Maybe attention is exactly what this place needs." As she exited, Heller called after her, voice softening. "You don't have to fight this alone." Amani didn't respond. She knew better than to trust half-hearted sympathy. By lunchtime, the whispers had grown sharper. Someone had printed stills from the video and taped them to her classroom door. She tore them down in silence. The students inside pretended not to watch. One of the boys in the back row smirked and whispered something to the girl beside him. She laughed too hard. "Enough," Imani said, her voice steel. "If any of you think that silence protects you or that laughter hides your cowardice, think again." No one answered, but a few looked away, uncomfortable now, unsure. The balance had shifted, if only slightly. That night, she sat at her kitchen table and opened her laptop. The cursor blinked at her like a dare. Her hands trembled slightly, but she began typing. Not a resignation, not a complaint. A letter. She wrote about the culture at Calder, about what had happened, about what it felt like to stand alone in a hallway full of witnesses and have no one move. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. Her words were clean, sharp, real. She posted it on her own social media account just before midnight. Her following was small, friends, former students, family, but within 2 hours it had been shared over 1,000 times. By morning, it had spread farther. A local teachers' union account reposted it. Then an education rights activist. Then a journalist from an online magazine focused on systemic inequity in elite institutions. Calder Prep woke up to fire. The halls buzzed with tension. Teachers whispered in corners. Students stared openly. Some nodded at her when she passed, awkwardly respectful. Others glared. A few walked out of her class before it began. She let them. In the afternoon, her email dinged with a message from a student she didn't know. No subject, just text. "He grabbed me once, too. I didn't say anything. I'm sorry, I didn't speak up for you." Another message followed minutes later. "He called me a name last year. The counselor told me not to make drama. Thank you for not backing down." Amani sat back in her chair, eyes burning. She hadn't expected this, not the flood, not the stories, not the quiet chorus of other voices slowly finding the strength to speak. But then came the pushback. A parent group, anonymous, posted an open letter calling her divisive and accusing her of weaponizing victimhood for attention. The comments beneath it were brutal. Typical. Always crying racism. Attention seeker. Calder deserves better than this kind of drama. She didn't reply. She forwarded it to the school board with a single sentence. "This is what happens when you speak the truth." That evening, someone vandalized her car. Keyed across the side in rough letters, "Liar." She filed a police report silently, refusing to show emotion, refusing to back down. The next day at school, her classroom was nearly full. Students sat quietly. They didn't smile. They didn't joke. Some didn't make eye contact, but no one laughed. Logan didn't show up. His friends were subdued. The school felt off balance. As she walked the halls, another student, a girl named Layla, stopped her near the lockers. "I saw it happen," she said quietly. "I didn't do anything. I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," Amani said gently. Layla shook her head. "No, but I won't be quiet anymore." That afternoon, a representative from the school district arrived for a confidential review. A plain-clothed woman in her 40s with a clipboard and a voice that asked precise, careful questions. Imani answered them all. Before leaving, the woman nodded to her. "You've started something here. Let's hope the board follows through." That night, alone in her apartment, Imani looked out the window at the city below. The lights, the chaos, the breath of 1,000 lives moving around her. She closed her eyes and exhaled. She didn't know what would come next, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. By Monday morning, Calder Prep no longer felt untouchable. What had once been whispered gossip now became spoken tension. Teachers were quiet, their usual small talk replaced by glances toward the main office. Students walked through the halls with their phones tucked away but buzzing constantly. Over the weekend, the story had spilled far beyond the confines of the school. It had hit local news outlets, been discussed on a viral education podcast, and featured in an op-ed written by a former Calder teacher who called the culture there a country club with coursework. The Board of Trustees had released a vague statement calling for a review of recent disciplinary concerns. Still, Logan Wells had yet to be seen on campus. Imani entered the school through the side entrance, as she had always done, but this time the security guard nodded to her with something close to respect. She returned the gesture and kept walking. Her classroom was quiet when she arrived. One student had already taken a seat, then another, and another. By the time the bell rang, nearly every desk was filled. No one spoke. She wrote a quote on the board and turned slowly to face them. Today we read, "No discussion, just words." No one protested. Later that day, she received an email from the superintendent's office requesting a formal meeting with her, the principal, and the school board's external investigator. It was scheduled for Wednesday. Attached was a file. The complaint she had submitted, now marked active investigation. Below it, another line, other reports pending. By midweek, more students came forward, some privately, some anonymously. One girl, a senior, requested a meeting with the investigator and shared that Logan had cornered her at a school dance the previous year and made crude remarks about her body. Another boy recounted being pressured into silence after witnessing similar behavior. The wall of silence was cracking. On Wednesday morning, the meeting room was sterile, white, too brightly lit. Principal Morgan sat stiffly at the end of the table, face drawn, lips pressed into a firm line. The school board investigator, a calm woman in a navy suit, welcomed Imani with a nod and gestured for her to sit. A note-taker clicked away at a laptop in the corner. "We want to thank you for your patience," the investigator began. "As you know, the nature of these allegations has prompted an expedited review." Principal Morgan shifted in his seat. "We take every student and staff concern seriously." Imani folded her hands in her lap. "Then explain to me why I was the only one who acted when that boy lifted my skirt. Explain why students who came forward before me were told not to make drama." There was a long silence. The note-taker stopped typing. "We're aware of failings," the investigator said carefully. "Systemic ones. The board is reviewing staff training procedures and administrative responses." "And Logan Wells?" Imani asked, her voice steady. Principal Morgan inhaled slowly. "He's been placed on temporary leave pending review." "That's not enough," she said. The investigator looked down at her notes, then up again. "We agree." That afternoon, the announcement came through a school-wide email. Subject, administrative update. Logan Wells would be withdrawn from Calder Prep for the remainder of the academic year. The message expressed regret and emphasized a commitment to safety and respect. The news spread like wildfire. Some students gasped audibly when it hit their phones. Others scoffed. Some cheered quietly behind closed doors. In the teacher's lounge, the atmosphere was tense. Miss Grant, a biology teacher who had kept her distance until now, approached Imani near the copier. "I was here when his sister was a student," she said. "Same behavior, same silence. I'm sorry, I didn't say anything sooner." Imani nodded once. Saying it now still matters. The next morning, the school held an emergency assembly. Students filed into the auditorium, buzzing with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. Principal Morgan stood at the podium, flanked by 2 board members. He looked smaller than usual. "I want to begin by addressing recent events," he said. "Actions were taken that do not reflect the values of Calder Preparatory Academy. We failed to act quickly. We failed to protect. And for that, we apologize." The room was still. "We are initiating a school-wide review of policies related to student conduct, reporting procedures, and staff accountability. We will also be implementing training on consent, boundaries, and appropriate behavior, effective immediately." Then, without drama, he ended, "Change begins here." After the assembly, a group of students waited outside the auditorium doors. A girl approached Imani quietly. "I'm Layla," she said. "I emailed you. I'm starting a student-led safety group. We'd like your help." Imani blinked, surprised. "You have my full support." She walked back to her classroom feeling lighter, though the weight of what had happened still clung to her skin like static. That night, she received a message from a former student at her old school. "Saw what you did. We always knew you were real." She stared at the message for a long time. Later, when she turned off the light in her apartment, she sat by the window and listened to the hum of the city. In the distance, traffic moved like a slow heartbeat. She thought of the students who had spoken up, of the staff who had finally stepped forward, of the board trying to fix something it had ignored for years. She thought of Logan, silent and gone, and she thought of herself. She was still standing. The air at Calder Prep was different now, not calm, not peaceful, but shifted, like the heat before a storm breaks. Change didn't come with trumpets or banners. It arrived in the small moments, longer glances from students who used to look through her, silences in classrooms that once roared with mockery, and most of all, conversations that dared to leave the shadows. Imani walked into her classroom that Monday morning to find something new taped to her door. It wasn't graffiti or a cruel photo. It was a simple yellow sticky note in loopy handwriting that read, "You were right. I was scared. Thank you." She pulled it off gently, folded it, and slipped it into her pocket. Inside, the students were already seated. Layla sat in the front row with a notebook open. Others looked up when she entered, not with the usual blankness, but with recognition. She wrote on the board, "Legacy is not what you leave behind. It's what you stand for while you're here." There were no jokes, no laughter, just quiet reading and the occasional click of pens. For the first time, she saw not a room of enemies, but possibility. After school, she attended the first meeting of the new student-led Safety and Equity Group. 10 students, 2 teachers, and Miss Clay, the counselor. They sat in a loose circle in one of the unused classrooms. The desks were pushed back, the windows open to let in the afternoon air. Layla began. This isn't just about Logan. It's about how easy it was for him to do what he did and know no one would stop him. Another student added, "Half of us didn't say anything because we thought no one would believe us, or worse, they'd laugh." Imani listened first, then she spoke. Silence is not neutral. It sides with power every time. But speaking up, that's resistance, even in whispers. They began making lists. What had failed? What needed to change? Ideas formed. A peer-led reporting system, required consent workshops, anonymous feedback forms that would go directly to an external committee. Imani didn't lead, she supported, and that was enough. 2 weeks later, she was invited to speak at the school's monthly parent-student assembly. She debated refusing, not out of fear, but because she wasn't interested in being the face of redemption. But in the end, she agreed, not for the administration, not for the image, but for the students who had found their voice through hers. The auditorium was packed. Parents lined the back walls. Students filled the aisles. Principal Morgan introduced her with a brief, strained nod, then stepped aside. She stood behind the podium, hands resting on its edges. The room hushed. "When I came to Calder Prep," she began, "I thought I was stepping into a school of excellence. And in many ways it is. But excellence without empathy, without accountability, is just privilege dressed in a blazer." There was a ripple in the room. Not laughter, not protest, just breath. What happened to me wasn't just a bad joke or a mistake. It was a symptom of a culture that lets certain students feel untouchable and others feel invisible. But this isn't a speech about what happened to me. This is about what we do now. She looked out at the students, locking eyes with a few who had once mocked her and now sat with lowered gazes. If we want this school to be better, we have to build that ourselves, together. Not with slogans, but with systems. Not with fear, but with truth. I didn't come here to fight, but I won't stand by while others are hurt like I was. And neither should you. There was no applause at first, just silence. Deep, real. Then someone in the back began clapping. Slowly, steadily, then more. Until the entire room echoed with it. Not the kind of applause that follows a performance, but the kind that comes after a reckoning. That night at home, Imani sat at the table, a cup of tea growing cold beside her, scrolling through messages. Former students. Teachers from other schools. Strangers. One read, "You reminded me I don't have to smile through everything." Another simply said, "Thank you for not letting them win." She placed her phone down and stared at the ceiling. She didn't feel victorious. She felt clear. At school the next day, more small things changed. Posters went up for upcoming consent training sessions. A bulletin board displayed anonymous student experiences with a sign, "We believe you." Teachers were given new guidelines for responding to harassment, and a new hotline was established, managed externally, where students could report misconduct without fear. She passed Logan's old locker, now empty, the nameplate removed. She didn't feel triumph, just space, as if the air around it had been purged. During lunch, a girl she didn't know approached her in the courtyard. He grabbed my arm once, in 9th grade, called me a name I don't repeat anymore. I told the teacher, and she told me not to stir things up. I thought I imagined it. But seeing you stand there, after what he did to you, it reminded me I didn't. "What's your name?" Imani asked. "Raya." "Raya, I believe you." The girl nodded, blinking fast, then walked away. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the LA skyline, Imani sat on her balcony wrapped in a light blanket. She watched the world move below. For the first time in weeks, she let herself relax, not because the work was over, but because the silence was broken. She had come to teach literature. Instead, she had taught a lesson no one would forget, not just in words, but in standing her ground. She didn't fight with anger. She stood with truth, and that changed everything. If this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Where are you watching from? Let us know.